I'm Wave, and today I thought I would talk about another visual novel adjacent game by the name of Eternal Fighter Zero, which is a fighting game, believe it or not, and is a fan/doujin work based around a lot of the old school key titles, namely being Kanon, Air, and also even some of the titles before that, like One. And I figured this would be an interesting game to kind of talk about, despite how trash I am at fighting games. So, let's get into it. So Eternal Fighter Zero, believe it or not, has actually been pretty well upkept by the fighting game community. There is a pretty dedicated community that has actually gone ahead and updated the game to where there is a little bit of extra quality of life features, but at the same time, most notably is the fact that they have updated the game to where you can play online against other people with rollback netcode, which as far as I'm aware is a certain term used for just the latency and not having a whole bunch of input delay on the buttons you're pressing, despite the fact that you're not playing it side by side on the same console. We're talking about the game in general. You could look, and like I said, there is a whole host of different characters from across multiple different old school visual novels that all kind of have that same connection, being that it is in some way connected to Studio Key and some of their older titles. What you can look is that there's actually a pretty diverse roster. Even some different characters have multiple different variants, and it is kind of interesting once you go ahead and go into the practice range and kind of try to test out each character, seeing how the developers of Eternal Fighter Zero kind of tried to put certain elements or characteristics from that character's route into their playstyle, such as IU having wings, or maybe just Mai being able to have a sort of spirit. I don't exactly remember when exactly in canon Makoto ended up getting a handgun, but for the most part it is kind of interesting seeing all the different characters have varying different playstyles. When it comes to customization and how you can actually play the game, there is an options menu where you can go ahead and adjust how difficult the CPUs are. So if you are somebody like me that is nowhere near good at fighting games, you can kind of put it down to the lowest setting and be able to feel it's still a pretty difficult game, but at the same time where you can kind of level the playing field. You could also go ahead and change your button layouts. There is also a different menu where you can actually customize the color palette for multiple skins across every single character. So you can have a total of, I believe, 12 different variants for color schemes that you could fully customize yourself and be able to use while you're playing, which is pretty cool. And then just as far as content, outside of playing against other people, you can go ahead and just play normal matches against CPUs, or you could actually go ahead and dive into the story mode, which has different rounds where you fight against characters that kind of make sense for the character that you ended up choosing for story mode to fight against, and just being able to progress through that. So even if you are somebody that's not necessarily going to be die hard, going ahead and trying to compete when it comes to Eternal Fighter Zero, there is still some content for you to just enjoy in general if you were to pick up the game. One thing I will say, as being somebody that is not too great at fighting games, apart from maybe Smash Bros, where you put buttons as simple as possible, I'll be able to manage. But every other fighting game has all these multitudes of different combo setups and button inputs that you have to put, and hardly any fighting games will ever actually put that information into the game itself. So it is something where you kind of have to pull up a wiki for the game, click on the character, and see all of the different variants, and it is kind of difficult, right? I could look at this and I'm okay, well, how would I begin to put in 623, 623, whatever, and I don't know. It's something you probably would be better off if you had a dedicated controller specifically tailored for fighting games, because believe me, I'm trying it on PS5 controller, and it's kind of tough with the D-pad. But I do think in a way that actually makes it to where there is a pretty high skill ceiling. So if you were to actually go ahead and dedicate a lot of time into Eternal Fighter Zero, you're probably going to end up appreciating the game a lot more than someone like me, maybe at surface level, because you can realize the amount of depth that goes into the game and being able to utilize it to the full potential. But yeah, I figured talking about Eternal Fighter Zero briefly would be kind of cool, because I didn't even know this game existed until a while back when I was making the video on Air. I ended up stumbling upon, oh wait, what? There's a Air fighting game, and while it's nowhere near official, it is something that is kind of a relic of the past, and it would be pretty interesting to just boot up the game and see something that you would have probably never thought existed in the first place. I could see that there was a lot of passion put behind Eternal Fighter Zero, and I think that's really cool. You see that even way back then, there was a lot of impact when it came to titles that Key produced, and how much it influenced other people to really want to convey the passion that they had for those titles in a different medium. But yes, those have been my very brief thoughts on Eternal Fighter Zero. I've been Wave. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.